Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Okay, welcome everybody. We got off to a little bit of a rough start. Yeah, thank you, Hadi. Okay, good. We're trying to excuse everyone. We're trying to get the technical parts down so we can make a decent YouTube production, inshallah, so other people can benefit. Okay. I'm going to start with a bit of self-promotion. Okay. Obviously, it's neat when we look at the scarcity of the attendance. We need some better marketing strategies, or we have to accept what Allah is sending us, which is even better. Okay, but we're going to start with a little self-promotion, and it's part of a story. So me and Hadi, who's the one who spends, unfortunately for him, the most time with me these days, we're in the Marché de l'Ouest, and there's a young lady in full hijab walking towards us, and he said, I don't know what he was thinking, we won't ask him, but he said, what do you think of this lady? And I'm looking at her and I say, this makes me right away think of Sheikh Nazim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. He said, what do you mean? I said, Sheikh Nazim said, don't wear your religion like a heavy coat, like a burden. Wear your religion lightly. We see all over Montreal, and I'm sure in much of the rest of the world, women in full Islamic dress who look totally miserable and bitter and angry. Terrible. I hate this. It's a terrible advertisement for Islam. And this lady was one. She looked completely, she had the full hijab, not quite niqab, but as close as you could get to niqab in a hijab, and the expression on her face was total misery, boredom, upsetness, suffering. And I remembered Sheikh Nazim, his teaching. And then I thought, wear your religion lightly. Then I thought, okay, now I know what I'm trying to do. I said, I have met, through my journey, some great beings. This is what I'm transmitting. Okay, some great spiritual beings, and the three who are most prominent in my mind are no longer alive. Okay, and their success, and that's Sheikh Nazim, Bawa Muhayyiddin from Sri Lanka, and Sheikh Abu Qasim Bil Khairi from Tunisia. None of them are alive, and none of them have muqaddams, successors, that are anywhere near their level. Not even close. The Naqshbandis are going to hate me for this. But there's no one close to these people. So I have been, over many years, a bit like a bee, searching for pollen that I can make into honey. Okay, and these are three of the largest flowers or fruit trees, call them what you want, where I gathered the pollen and hopefully have transformed it into something sweet, into honey. So that's my mission, really. It's not from me, it's transmitting the wisdom that I picked up from these great spiritual beings. So that's what we're doing here, amongst other places. Now, following that, I wanted to say something else, because we're not going to talk about, unfortunately or fortunately, we're not talking about authenticity today. I thought that's what we're talking about, but what we're going to do is try to follow my own process of discovery and my own process of contemplation, and trying to share it with you. Okay, one of the subjects I've been strong on over the years has to do something with comparative religion. And each of the religions has their particular strengths. Okay? But each of the religions has their particular nationalisms and narrowness. Okay? So when I told one of my sheikhs, he wasn't one of those three, when I told one of my sheikhs good things about other religions, he didn't like it. He didn't like my writing about this either, because he said, Islam is the only valid religion. You know, this is narrow-mindedness, unfortunately. And there's a lot of it. It's not only in Islam. There's plenty in Christianity and Judaism and Buddhism, Hinduism, everywhere. There's this narrowness. I don't accept it. There's something we can learn from each of the traditions. Okay. I was just telling Hadi a little while ago about some situation that I had in counseling, and you know, there are people who have a lot of trouble earning their living. It's very difficult for them just to make ends meet. Now we see more and more of it. Okay? Now in the Bible there's a saying which says the following, and thou shalt, maybe Imran knows this. Did you ever study any Christianity, Imran?
Yes, a little.
A little, okay. And thou shalt earn thy daily bread through the sweat of thy brow. Do you remember that saying? Yeah. Okay. Unfortunately, we don't really have this wisdom. Maybe it's somewhere there, but I haven't seen this wisdom in any of the Islamic sources. What it says is it's going to be tough to earn your living. You're going to have to work your butt off to earn a decent living for most people. You know, you have now they call them the trust babies, whose parents are wealthy, but that gives you another problem. You can see it with Hunter Bidens of the world. Okay, but that's another problem. But for most people, they're going to have to work really hard to earn their living. Now, that's one of the wisdoms of Christianity. And each of the traditions has their strength. So let's go through them briefly. What are the strengths? I believe also I adopted Islam. I believe it's the best. But there are other things really worthwhile and useful in other religions. Okay. So what's the strength of Islam? What is the strongest point of Islam? Hadi's going to tell us the answer.
Everything.
Everything. Okay, so Hadi is one of the religious nationalists. Okay.
No, the purity of the message.
The purity of the message. I would say the clarity of the message. Islam has the clearest, most accurate theology, Aqidah, beliefs, and it has amongst the strongest Iman, faith. And we see now finally the Muslims of Canada are standing up against all this transgender nonsense in the schools. And the Muslims that's because they have clear-cut values and clear-cut Aqidah. Okay? Now, Christianity. What is the strongest part of Christianity?
Charity.
Exactly. Now, when I was in Cyprus, we had a majnoon, a crazy man. I won't name him, but he was German. But he was very fervent in his practices. He was very strict in his Islamic practices. And I followed him over the years. This is back 40 years. And eventually, he still loves Islam, but eventually he became a Christian. So I said to him, Abdullah, why did you become a Christian? He said, that's where I found the most charitable people. And you know my situation, I need charity. He has issues, health issues, mental health issues, whatever. And he said, that's where I found the most charitable people. So I navigated towards spirituality, towards Christianity. Now, there's a few cute little stories. When I was we'll get to Judaism now. When I was in Jordan, I was studying Arabic. I was with a group of students from around the world, and one was a Palestinian American. And when I told him this, and he had a complete, what's the word? He detested Jews. So he couldn't believe that Judaism could actually have something positive. So he looked at me and he said, what about Judaism? As if it's impossible that Judaism has anything special. And I didn't know the answer. I hadn't thought about this before. It's certainly not the idea that they're the chosen people. That's not the special aspect of Judaism. And it came to me like a revelation, like an inspiration. I said, humanism. And if you go back to the original, not the Israelis are, I'm sorry to say it, they're Arabized Jews. You know, but the real Jews, the ones like that came from Eastern Europe, there's a lot of humanity there. And you'll see it when they talk. And even in the language itself, Yiddish, There's a lot of very appropriate terms for human weaknesses and foibles and quirks that are helpful because they make it's all right. You know, if you're always doing something wrong, you're a schlemazel. If you're always, they have words for all the different human foibles. If you're always badly dressed, you're a schlump. But these are accepted categories of humanity. So it's not all about honor and dignity. There's humanism there. Then there's Hinduism. What do you think is strongest about Hinduism? I think. Okay. Now we all know they have weird monkey gods and elephant. There's some weirdness in Hinduism. And I've been to India. What?
The clarity of their practice of not the practice, but how to get to.
They have a path, but the Buddhists are actually better in terms of defining the path. But the Hindus have the most spectacular things happen in their religion. Like there was a Hindu guru, I like this story, I have to tell. The Sai Baba story. Did I ever tell you the Sai Baba story, Imran? Sai Baba was this guru in India. It was in one of those cities like Allahabad. It's not. Do you know the city? Imran, you should know your Indian geography. Okay, it's one of those Abad cities, like Allahabad. It's one of those in the middle southern India. He was a guru there, and he was a guru who was specialized, people knew, in making objects appear. He could bring any object. So there was an American, he was a psychiatrist, like me, smart aleck, and he said, I'm going to catch him. So he went all the way to India. I think he may have been, he became a follower after. He went all the way to India to see Sai Baba, and he said, I'm going to catch him. He said, I want you to give me the latest Canon camera, or Sony camera. He named the camera, the exact model. And Sai Baba said, okay, no problem. And he shook his hand, and he took the camera, and he gave him the camera. So now he was amazed. But he was flying back the next day to America. This is a true story. He's flying back the next day to America. Did you ever hear this story, Imran? Imran? No. He's flying back to America, and he goes to the most famous camera shop in New York City. People in New York, they all know this place. I went there once myself. B&H, yeah. B&H, yeah. In New York City. He goes right there with his camera. And he says, any of you guys sold this camera? The guy says, oh, no, it's not my department. Here, bring Moshe here, or whatever. I think it's run by Jewish people. He says, bring Moshe here. Moshe, do you know? He said, yeah, there was this guy, and then he described Sai Baba in all these red robes. And he came in, he asked me for the camera, and he gave me cash, and he took it. He was in India at the time, in Allahabad. But he had transported himself, bought the camera, and brought it back. Okay, so people see this. He turned out to be not such a great guy, Sai Baba, but they're capable. They're capable of these kind of fancy miracles.
Something we can really believe?
Yeah, it happened. How can you not believe it? It happened. Why it happened and whether it's good to happen is a whole other thing. But yeah, it's called, it's known in spirituality. There were Sufis who could do this also, teleportation. You could be in two places at the same time. There were people who were sure they had seen Sheikh Nazim in another place. There was people in Cyprus, I remember, that said, I saw Sheikh Nazim at the Kaaba when he was in Cyprus, physically. So there are people who can do these kind of things. But anyway, so that's the attraction of Hinduism. They do, and there's probably one of the most famous gurus is Nim Karoli Baba. My first wife, Mariam, had spent some time with Nim Karoli Baba, and she told me a story. One time a man came up to him, and he was in full hepatitis. In India it's very common. Completely yellow. And he was feeling very sick, and he said, oh, Baba, please do something for me. Nim Karoli Baba, who was also known as Maharaji, hugged him, and the whole thing went away, and he's back to health. These things can be done. This was also a Hindu thing. Now the Buddhists that we're interested in, that's really the subject of today, what are the Buddhists best at? Hari.
Sitting.
They're very good at sitting. Okay. But the Buddhists, Imran knows something about Buddhism. What are the Buddhists best at?
The discernment of the mind.
Okay, that's pretty close. Yeah. The Buddhists are best at introspection and seeing what's going on in your inner states, because they spend thousands of hours and years just watching their internal mind. So if you want to look at classifications and categories of mental processes, there's no one better than the Buddhists. In fact, all the psychologists are plagiarizing Buddhism now. Everywhere you go in psychology, mindfulness, stress reduction mindfulness, cognitive mindfulness, mindfulness for borderlines, everything. Everyone is stealing from the Buddhists, their ideas, because they've been watching the mind for so long. So what interests us, and this is really the key point in today's session, I don't have a pointer here, we'll just use this. We're working on our technology, folks, don't worry. So the Buddhists have the theory of the Klesas. What are the Klesas? Anyone want to try? Hadi, what are the Klesas? Imran, what are the Klesas?
You have.
No, not which ones. What does Klesas mean? Anyone? You see, I've been talking about this. No, it's not a framework, really.
Impedance.
Impediments, you can call them impediments. I've been teaching this for a long time, and most people, I've yet to have someone come back to me and say, that theory about the Klesas, it's been really helpful. But I don't think anyone has, I'm working on it myself, but I don't think anyone has fully gotten the implications. But this is the basis for every spiritual path. Whether it's Christian, Islamic, Shia, Buddhist, Hindu, this is the basis for every spiritual path. And what it says, the best word I like for this, it's a colorful English word, is defilements. Okay. You've defiled your own nature by following these. Okay. The first, there are various classifications. Some of them are 5, some of them are 6. I've concentrated them down to 4 basic ones. Okay? Okay, he has to watch the camera. So maybe sit in a different place. Okay, so the first one, which is the basis of the entire American enterprise, is desire. Getting what you want. There are a couple of clever Americans who said there's only one thing worse than not getting what you want, it's getting it. Because the desire is a trick. Allah is Khair al Mutakirin. What's the word? Hadi. You don't remember? The best of tricksters.
Mukarabin?
No, it's not Mukarabin. It's anyway. He's the best of tricksters. Because Makirin, that's it. Khair al Makirin. Allah tricks you through desire. Sometimes to do good and sometimes to do evil. Okay? So if there wasn't a sexual desire, the population would be depleted. Who would do an act that would bring you all this work and expenses and difficulties with your children if there weren't the sexual desire to go, I want to do this. The consequences are later, I'll see. Now you have smart Alecs in the West who think they can game the system and not have children because they see how much trouble children is. So now with birth control and all this stuff, this corruption, they can get their desire fulfilled without having the natural consequences, which are going to be hard work. Okay, so whenever you see, now this is for each of us, okay, it's important for you to understand. If you want to do serious spiritual work, this is the toughest. This is the essence. This should be the final teaching on the spiritual path. This is the tough stuff. Okay? You have a desire for something, you really want it, you're willing to do anything for it, and you call yourself on it. It's a trick. It's telling you a lie. It's telling you, if you get this, you'll be a happy person. Okay? As I used to say to the Pakistani mothers at the mosque, if you think, because there's all kinds of desires, not only sexual, if you think a medical degree is the answer for the happiness of your child, come with me to McGill to continuing medical. I want you to see the doctors after 20 and 30 years and tell me these are happy people. I want you to see what you're pushing your sons and your daughters into, to see what they look like 20, 30 years down the line. And then the mothers would come running, don't say this, Dr. Ibrahim, please, you're going to discourage my children. I said, no, I'm going to discourage you. If they have the vocation, it's okay. They'll be at peace with it. If they're doing it for social ambition, money, whatever, prestige, they're going to be miserable. Totally. And bad doctors on top of it, which we have plenty of. So desire. Whenever you have a desire, remind yourself. Like now in the city, in the summer, okay, in all the Western cities, you see women in all kinds of states of dress or undress. And it stirs desire. It's absolutely normal. You can't say, if you say anything, you're a macho misogynist. To 20?
To 25.
To 25. Oh boy, we have a lot to talk about. We may have to continue this. Okay, 25 is more than enough. We may have to continue this next 3 minutes. Okay. So next week, we will start covering this. But just, even if you start with this one. So there's a woman in the street, you can't help yourself seeing half-naked women in a Western country, and right away you're just, this one is really, And your mind is telling you, if you could only be with this lady, if you can only sleep with this lady, it would be eternal happiness. It's a trick. We all know it logically, but inside our mind it's saying, this is the key to happiness. Chase this lady down. And some people do. They spend their lives chasing down ladies, and we know where that ends. Anyway, so we have to be, sometimes it's okay, but we have within limits. That's what Islam teaches us, within limits. Okay, so because I like to talk a lot, but next week we'll go in depth into the 4 Klesas. But I'm telling you all, from personal experience, this teaching is the key to your entire spiritual path. Getting a handle on these 4 Klesas and figuring out how to antidote them, how to detoxify them, is the key to the entire spiritual way. But it's tough work. It's very tough work, because our mind keeps tricking us. Khair al-makiri. Allah is the best of... They say, in the English translations, they say the best of planners. But makir is not planning. Makir is tricking, is ruse. Allah tricks us into doing the right things, but we can also be tricked into doing the wrong things, so we have to be aware. Okay, so we'll leave it as Subhana Rabbika Rabbil Izzati Amma Yasifun Salamun Mursalin. Thank you for listening, people, and hopefully this will go on YouTube and you can make your comments, and hopefully will generate a good desire to come back next week to find out more about this teaching, which is very fundamental. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin.